Furthermore, shall we slowly start our discussion? Okay, another 2 minutes. Let's see. Meantime, find your lecture material for the third topic. We completed the second topic last week, right? Completed. So, find your lecture materials for the third topic. That will take around 1 hour, and then move to the fourth topic today. And if possible, after the break, I will explain you the assignment as well, group assignment, so that you can start working on it. There will be 2 activities. One is the group. With the last group also, previous group, we had a quiz that I think worked for some students. I don't know for you all, but as a facilitator, as a lecturer, I have seen when students are giving quizzes, especially during the semester, maybe 5th week, 8th week, or somewhere. At least then you go through the lecture materials up to that point, and then understand those topics to some extent. Otherwise, what happens is you keep everything to the last moment and try to study them during the last 2-3 weeks. That is very difficult to understand it. So, for the same reason, I have anyway planned to have a quiz for your group as well. Maybe somewhere in 9th week or 10th week, covering the initial 5 topics, 5 or 6 maximum, so that marks allocated for that would be around 15, by the way, but covering those few topics. So those are simple MCQ questions. If possible, let's administer or let's conduct it through the LMS. You have to physically come here to attend the quiz. Otherwise, I will conduct the classroom itself. Probably for the exception group, we'll have to make an arrangement. They are joining only online. Most so we'll try to find a solution. In addition to that, there will be a small group activity, small group project to understand the practical side of this subject. You know, operations management is a very much practical subject. Without going to the industry, it's difficult to understand the real challenges of operations management decision making and the real sense of operations management decision making. So that I need you all to form small groups, then select the company and talk to the managers, find some details about the company and the operations systems, operations decisions, operations processes on a given topic. I will let you know. Most probably that will be on the 4th topic. So I will give you the other instructions as well. The group project where you will gather details from the management from practical point of view and then summarize them into a print. That is the remaining part of the assignment. That is what. So let's slowly start it. Good morning, everyone. I hope now those who are connected online, there are 10, I guess. Hope you can hear us. Are you there?
Yes, sir, you can hear you. Good morning.
Okay. Stay connected to the meeting throughout and keep others also informed that we have started. Uh, we are moving to the third topic. In operations management, now it is this part of business operations management or the production management that is responsible for what? Production management, operations management is responsible for production activities. So producing products, like in case of manufacturing industries, in case of services, operations managers involved in managing the processes through which they create services and deliver them to the customers. So one of the main important business activities in any business, in any industry, despite the scale of the business, small to medium scale, large scale businesses, or multinational corporations. In almost all the organizations, operations play a critical role, very important. In our subject, we study how the managers who are responsible for operations decisions, operations managers, hello, you're not connected? Right. The managers who are responsible for operations decisions, how they should make their operations related decisions, what decisions they make and how they should make. So we completed the second topic last week that was on product designing part of it, right? Product designing, right? After completing it, we just move to another area, not necessarily an operations management decision, but to make many operations decisions, we need to work on this area. පැහැදිලිද? මේක operations decision එකක් නෙවෙයි පැත්තට බැලුවොත්. හැබැයි operations decisions ගොඩක් ගන්න මේ area එක හරි වැදගත්. So that area is known as demand forecasting or demand planning or demand forecasting. Nowadays, this is known as demand planning or as a part of supply chain analytics, right? So that is a broader area now. But here we try to understand the importance of demand forecasting for making operations management decisions. And then we try to identify what are the different techniques available for demand forecasting. So the two areas, define forecasting and identify different forecasting techniques. Maybe around 20 to 30 minutes, we will quickly complete that part. Prior to that, we will also identify why forecasting is important for operations management decisions, operations related decisions. What and what type of decisions, what and what type of demand forecasts are needed. That is the area we try to understand. Is that clear? Make operations management topic එකක් නෙවෙයි. හැබැයි operations management decision making වලට අවශ්‍යයි. Right? So this is a part of decision making. So we need to identify it. Being accounting or applied accounting students, these are not new to you. Even for accounting decisions, financial accounting decisions, cost accounting decisions, and even for financial decisions. Right? Managers are heavily dependent on what? Forecasts. Right? So they need to know about what's going to happen in our business in future, maybe next few months' time, few years' time. Right? So forecasting is very important in any management activity, so as in operations. So the initial few slides on forecasting, that is not specific to operations management. The forecast is a statement about future value of a variable in interest. Whatever the variable we consider, right? In case of day-to-day life, it could be weather forecast. It could be share prices. They may forecast. It could be temperature. There could be it could be interest rates or exchange rates. when you want to make decisions about future with some certainty, of course, what we do is we just forecast what will happen and accordingly we make our decisions. So accordingly, this process, what we call forecasting, is the process that we use to predict the future. Predict the future. For that, there are different approaches, especially the most common approach is, most widely used approach is, we look at what has happened in the past and we try to project them to the future and predict what will happen in future. That is what we call forecasting process. Right. Projecting the past values to the future and see what will happen in future. Right. So that is forecasting. That, as you know. Coming to business forecasting, right? That means using forecasting for business decisions, management decision making. There are various different forecasts we are interested in, but mostly about the demand forecasting. Especially our part of the business, that is operations, sales, marketing. Yeah, interrelated, but our area is operations management, manufacturing management. For that also, the main forecasting they involved is demand forecasting. So hereinafter, our focus is on demand forecasting. As you can simply understand, certain details are given here. So demand forecasting is best known as the area of business forecasting. But as accounting students, you are involved in other forecasting as well, right? So like what? In addition to demand forecasting, what are the other forecasts you do? Expenditure, accounting. For accounting purposes, what kind of forecasting you are often involved in? Budget forecasting, budgets, budgets, expenditure in one side, income on the other side. Right. So you forecast expenditure and income of the business for the next few months, few years time. So that's cash flow forecasts. Cash flow, not necessarily demand. That could be one part of it. Beyond that, there can be other expenditures. Income, maybe under the budget. There can be various different categories about which you have to forecast. But coming to operations management decisions, our main type of forecast is demand forecasting. What do you mean by demand forecasting? Is it clear? What do you mean by demand forecasting? It's very simple. What our demand would be for our different products and services. So, assume a manufacturer, the typical example that I take most of the time, that could be biscuits manufacturing, let's say CBL, right? They have different production lines to produce different products. One could be biscuits, one could be chocolates, one could be cakes, and some other businesses also, SBUs. But let's say biscuits, SBU, and under that, there can be a wide range of products under different brand names. It could be Munchie chocolate cream, Munchie super cream cracker, Munchie Hawaiian cookies, Munchie tikrimari, whatever. Right? Various different product lines. So to start manufacturing smoothly and plan the production, what they have to initially do is forecast the demand for each product category in a most accurate manner. Right. So that is what we call demand forecasting. The demand for their product categories for the next few months, few quarters, at least. Demand forecasting. This is applicable for any type of manufacturing business. Where without forecasts, making operations management decisions would be extremely difficult. Here what you get is what are the different uses of demand forecasting? Where we can use demand forecast data, demand forecast figures in making operations management decisions. Just go through whether you can understand them. Some of the key operations management decisions that are dependent on demand forecast. One such decision would be how much inventory is needed in order to meet the demand. And accordingly, to decide inventory levels, you have to decide how much inventory, how much, or what should be the production rates. At a factory, capacities are different. We will discuss that as a next topic. So, what should be the production rate we have to maintain? Daily basis, weekly basis, to make sure that we have the sufficient inventory to meet the market demand for the next few months, few quarters, at least for next year. So demand forecasting data is very much useful. In the same manner, there are many other uses. Quickly go through and check whether you can understand them. With the other points, I check whether you can understand them. Based on forecast figures, certain other operations decisions like how much material to purchase to start the production on time. Because to start production, you need various different raw materials, ingredients, components. So to calculate them accurately or estimate them accurately, you need demand data, demand forecast. And accordingly order them from suppliers to smoothly start the production and meet the future demand. To decide on the capacity levels, operations capacities, how many workers required, how many machines required, and then how many factories and various other, right? So various different capacity related decisions. In fact, that will be the next topic we are going to start after the break, so that you will quickly you will easily understand that topic when you understand how we use forecast data for capacity planning. So likewise, most of the other topics we are going to cover in operations management relates to demand forecasts. Relates to demand forecast. And that is why we have this topic as a third one, so that you can understand. Not only that, even other facilities like transportation requirements, warehousing requirements and all can be accurately planned, estimated with the support of accurate forecasts. Size of workforce required to meet the production requirements and many other decisions. That is for specific operations management purposes that we use forecasting. But not only that, I just gave you a few examples. To see the big picture, operations planning, like in other management planning, can be divided into not only short term, but two other time frames as well. We call it time or the planning horizon. So there are three main time periods that we consider in management, so as in operations management. And here, Tuna, there are three time zones. In addition to the short-term decision making, we consider the intermediate term and the long term. So long term refers to more than 1 year, 1 to 10 years, or sometimes 18 months to 18 months plus. Beyond 1 year, 1.5 years time, we consider as long term. In between 18 months to 3 months, maybe 12 months to 3 months, that time period we consider as medium term or intermediate term period, coming to less than 3 months. That is the short term period that we consider. So the forecasts are useful in making various such planning decisions at different time periods. Certain examples that I gave you are belonging to short term periods, up to 3 months or so, 3 months, 6 months, but let's say 3 months. But not only that, demand forecasts are used during intermediate decision making also, like 3 months to 12 months. Plan the production rates, plan the workforce levels. Workforce levels means how many workers we require to start the production and continue the production. And then allocate budgets among divisions. And schedule jobs and other resources among different orders. And establishing purchasing plans, procurement plans, purchasing plans, supply plans. We need more forecast data. Just have an idea, that's enough. Not only that, to make certain long-term decisions. Long-term decisions like, in addition to the existing factory, to decide whether to plan for a new factory, new machinery, new technology, to expand operations in the long run. And also to determine other resources required, maybe the land, maybe equipments, maybe labor. In the long run, we need such forecast data of the display. So that is why forecasts are needed. Is it clear? So we quickly identified what demand forecasting is, and in operations management decisions, why forecast data is useful. Quickly go through that part and ask some questions, if any. After that, we will quickly move to identify what are the different forecasting techniques available, and quickly complete it probably within 20 to 30 minutes time. Okay, quickly go through the area we understood and check whether you have a clear idea about it. Those who have connected online also can ask questions if something is not clear. Demand forecasting. Uses of demand forecasting. Clear? When you look at past question papers, you might see some questions like small parts of questions, maybe for 5 marks, 10 marks probably. Uses of demand forecasting. Maybe long term, medium term, and short term purposes, where demand forecasted data can be used. එතකොට අර දැනට දැනන් ටික ලියලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. හොඳද? accounting වලට finance මේ costing වලට use කරපු ටික විතරක් ලියලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. You should relate forecast uses of forecasting for operations management decision making. Operations management, that is, you produce product, create and deliver services, and for that plan the operations resources and plan purchasing, plan production, how demand forecasts are used. Do you have any questions? Or shall we quickly move to the second part of the topic? Shall we? Fine. Now here we try to identify what are techniques available for managers for accurately forecasting demand. So we call them demand forecasting approaches, which are broadly divided into two categories, and there is the third one as well. What is the first category? Well, I will start with the first one. The first one mentioned here. That is called subjective forecasting, also known as judgmental forecasting. And the second one, that is more popular and commonly used technique, we call it objective forecasting, also known as statistical forecasting or quantitative forecasting. And so those are the two main. One is called subjective, that is judgmental forecasting techniques or approach. And the other one is known as objective forecasting or statistical forecasting. In addition to that, there are some techniques in which we see a combination of both quantitative and qualitative approaches. We call them mixed approach. Those are the three main categories. Hello? Hello? You can do that during the break. Right. Have you heard of them before? I think yes. Have you? Forecasting the managers I hope you have heard of it. Probably you have heard of objective forecasting very often. Right. Judgmental. So let's try to quickly get an idea. So let's start with quantitative methods or objective forecasting. Objective forecasting. Objective or statistical forecasting is the most common, most simple form of it. As the term tells you, statistical forecasting. That means using some statistical techniques, some mathematical formula. When we do the forecasting, we call it quantitative forecasting or statistical forecasting or objective forecasting. And obviously, to apply some formula and calculate the forecast, what we need then? We need some past figures. Past numbers we need. Then only we can apply them into a formula and then project them to the future and forecast. So, for quantitative forecasting, what is needed? We need historical data of that variable. Say, if it is about demand, past figures in the form of sales. Past sales figures will be there. Then we can use them forecast future. Historical data is required. And then there are different formula, statistical formula, to project them to the future that you are familiar with. I will just show you. But you are familiar with them as well. Right. What else you can understand? It mentions here, quantitative methods are often used when historical data exists and then when situation is stable. That means when the environment is not so volatile, changing faster, such quantitative techniques may be more appropriate. Hello? Reply karna වැඩි පස්සේ කරගන්න. Not to you. Now, with the other person. ඉස්සෙල්ලා වඩා. දැන් යන්න. What do you think? If you consider short-term period, medium-term and long-term, in your understanding, when these quantitative data would be more appropriate to use, during the short-term, medium-term or long-term? Because it says the situation should be stable, not so changing or volatile. So quantitative forecasting, would that be appropriate for short-term move, or medium-term or long-term? What do you think? Huh? Of course, yes, as you correctly identify, it says quantitative data forecasting or the quantitative approach is more appropriate for short-term and medium-term because the situation is more or less stable and related to the future. Related to the past. Coming to long term, that is beyond 1 year or more than 18 months, right? So the environment may be different. Things may get changed so that just quantitative forecasts may not be enough. That's what they say. So that's why for existing products that are manufactured using current processes, current technology, right? Make decisions about them. These type of quantitative techniques would be more appropriate. Maybe for the next 3 months or 4 quarters, 1 year. Decision making, this kind of approach would be better. We will identify what are the techniques available. So, quantitative methods involves mathematical equations, statistical equations that we will identify later. There are different techniques, so that different formula. Give an example, manufacturer like Singer, refrigerator manufacturer, they may use quantitative methods to forecast sales of refrigerators for the 2026, at least first 2 quarters of 2026, and accordingly plan the production. Unilever will can efficiently use these techniques to plan the production for 2026 for various different product categories. Existing products, they have the past data, sales figures. So each month, covering each area of the country, so that they can easily use them to forecast the demand for the 2026 and accordingly plan the production and other operations decisions accordingly. What you see here are such different statistical techniques. And there are many, but only, I have just introduced only these. There are time series techniques, there are regression models, correlation models, under statistical forecasting. Right? Don't worry, we are not going to discuss things in detail, just to get an idea only. I'm just showing you. Right? We will discuss very basic, simple techniques at your level to get a simple idea. But practically, there are many techniques, advanced techniques. I hope that is clear. That is quantitative techniques. We will come here and identify a few techniques and then forecast accuracy as well. After identifying the other approach, that is qualitative approach. Is it clear? Write it down somewhere or whatever you want. And after that, I will go to qualitative part after 2 minutes. You just join. We are talking about demand forecasting. So to make many operations management decisions about future, we need some forecast. It is through a process called forecasting. We forecast figures. Here, basically, the demand forecast. Let's go, yeah. You have doubt? Yeah. Okay. That is the demand. That is demand forecasting. Very much useful for operations management. Hope that is clear. We will take a few techniques a little later and understand some simple calculations also. Shall we move to the second technique here? That is called qualitative approach for decision making. Qualitative approach for demand forecasting. Sorry. That could be little new to you sometimes. But the idea is very simple. As you see it here, judgmental forecasting or subjective forecasting or qualitative forecasting based on not numbers you get from past data, no, but based on the judgments, opinions of experts in the field. You know, judgments, opinions of the experts in the field, right? And based on their judgments, based on their opinions, we arrive at our forecasts. Especially when no past data exists. Assume that a company is planning for a new product, a totally new product that they have not produced ever before. Now they don't know about the past data, sales, what will happen. They don't know even what will happen in the market because this is a new product. It will be new technology, new product. But they want to make decisions about like the size of the factory, the machine requirements, production volumes, right? According to plan the materials, they need some data, they need some figures as forecast, but they don't have past figures. In such a case, this is the technique, they call it qualitative approach. There are various different ways. They get the opinions or judgments of various different experts in the field and summarize them into a figure. They use that as a forecast for making decisions. Such approach is known as subjective approach. When to use? When you don't have past data. And especially when the situation is volatile and vague and changing faster. For an example, for a new product you are planning, or a new technology you are going to adapt, you have to use forecasting. So, in your understanding, when this would be more appropriate, in the short run, in the medium run, or long run, this qualitative forecasting approach. Okay. Yeah. Mostly, this technique is used for long-term decision-making purposes. because just using past figures for long term may not be enough. Right? Mostly for long term decision making, decision makers can use qualitative or the subjective forecasting. At the same time, we see now in production decision making, in demand forecasting, they use it even for the intermediate term. They don't just depend on the past data, right? They get the expert opinions to plan the intermediate term operations decisions as well. They use data. In addition to that, they use opinions of experts as well for intermediate level also, intermediate term also. But mostly for short-term decision making, they depend on quantitative techniques, especially realization. Say for an example, assume a retail network like Keels, Cargills, they have their physical branches. So they know how to maintain inventories to cater the demand at their physical branches, so in their physical branches. But assume that they are going to establish a new online platform, take orders and deliver online orders. And for that, they don't have sometimes past data. They can't just predict what will happen. How to plan the website, how to plan order taking processes, warehousing, delivery processes, and on. And for making such decisions, of course, they will have to use some forecast sales or forecasted sales. And for that, they might get the opinions of experts in retailing businesses. And then accordingly plan the demand for their online service, online available. So qualitative forecasting involves experiences of the people, experts, and their intuition. Based on their judgment, the experts will support businesses for that. So for that, also there are different techniques that I will begin here. Here only 3 techniques are mentioned, but in slide number 10, you get another list of few judgmental forecasting techniques. I will take only 5 to 7 minutes to quickly cover these different judgmental forecasting, but you must know a little more details about it. These are the most common qualitative forecasting methods that we will quickly identify. Slide number 10. Those who are connected online, if you have some doubts, feel free to ask questions. There are 19 participants. Good to see. So these are the most common judgmental forecasting techniques. Good to know. Are you aware of them? Have you come across them before? Mita kalian අහලා තියනවද? Mita kalian study කරලා තියනවද? ඉතර නේද? How about in accounting? For forecasting purposes, what are the techniques you usually commonly use? Quantitative method එක නේද? Last year budget එක ඒ figures තමයි ගොඩක් වෙලාට ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දට use කරන්නේ නේද? ඒකෙම යම් adjustments වලට තියෙනවා. එහෙමද? තව what are the other methods? Come on. Stocks. This store data. Historical data තමයි use කරන්නේ. හරි. Quantitative approach එක තමයි අපි use කරන්නේ කියන්නේ නේද? Historical data base වෙලා අපි යනවා ඉස්සරහට. Right. Now මේක මොකද්ද මේ කියන්නේ? ඇත්තටම දැන් accounting purpose එකට ඒක හරියි. For accounting and financial purposes, historical data reveals you the story. But coming to demand, that is, I mean, that can be varied in future. So to accurately forecast demand, especially in the long run and intermediate term, some techniques like this would be useful. Now, among them, the first two techniques, one is called Delphi technique, and there is another one called nominal proof technique. They are not so, they are used for various different purposes, but for demand forecasting, there are other ways that are more practical. But you don't, if you want to know, little more details about Delphi technique, is a technique where, now assume they want to know about a figure. What will happen to their demand of their new product in 2026, 2027? To decide that, they will get a support of a person called a skill coordinator. They will appoint a person, a coordinator, to prepare some questions on areas where they want to know details. Right? He will prepare a questionnaire kind of thing, he or she. Right? And to answer these questionnaire or these questions, they find some resource persons, experts. Not only within the organization, maybe outside the organization, experts, they will appoint, they will select many number of respondents, experts. It could be 5, it could be 10, 12, or more than that even. Then what they do is they distribute the questionnaire to them and ask them to fill the questionnaire and send them back, including all the questions they want to get answers. They prepare a questionnaire and they distribute them to the experts. Based on the answers they get, they summarize everything, especially this person. Coordinator will summarize figures, information or insights gathered from different experts. And then further analyze, do we have enough information? Or should we ask more questions from them? Right. Likewise, if they want to know more, they will prepare some more questions and then send them back again and collect answers. So likewise, maybe 2-3 steps. Accordingly, they will gather a lot of information from those experts in a qualitative manner. And that approach is known as Delphi technique. In that way, managers will be able to gather a lot of fresh information, up-to-date opinions. By summarizing them, they can arrive at a forecasted figure. They finally decide. What is that technique? Delphi technique. And it's very practical, very useful technique to gather a lot of new insights, new information, creative ideas, different viewpoints from a panel of experts. Now you might see even in the second approach, what is the name of it? Nominal proof technique. They are also opinions are gathered from a panel of experts. What is the difference here compared to the first one? Read that. In the first one, those panel of experts do not meet each other. They work separately at their places. But here, in a nominal proof technique, the main difference is they are gathered at one place. They are called for a meeting. Right? So they meet each other. And then only this person, or maybe the team, they are asking questions to gather their information, their insights. So they comment on each other's comments. Right? So together it's a kind of forum, discussion. That they share their views, opinions, and then they identify different opinions, prioritize them, decide what are the forecasts accordingly. So what they call nominal group technique is different from the earlier one. Now, what do you think? Which one would be more efficient? Which one would be easily conducted? Delphi or nominal group? Okay, one might say Delphi, one might say nominal group. Yeah, different views are there. So that different organizations depending on their requirements. Especially nominal group technique can be completed quickly because everyone come together. Within a day or probably within few hours time, they can conduct this data collection and summarizing it and finalize everything. But for Delphi, it takes longer time. If they do not meet, sometimes you can't ask all the questions in one questionnaire. You'll have to send it again, so it takes time. But at the same time, it says this nominal group technique is appropriate only for certain situations. If you want more new ideas, different ideas, then you should go for Delphi technique, not for nominal group. All the different views and all. So you should go for Delphi, not for nominal group. But nominal group technique would be more efficient. Anyway, that's enough. So those are the two main techniques mentioned here. Is it clear? දැන් ටිකක් අදහසක් තිබ්බම ඇති. මොකද්ද ඩෙල්ෆි කියන්නේ? මොකද්ද nominal? ඇයි ඒක වැදගත් forecasting වලදී? කොහෙද use කරන්නේ? More than these two, often for demand forecasting, what businesses would use is market surveys or market research. Market research. That's also a qualitative approach. Market research. As you may have heard, there can be market research firms, market research departments in an organization. They prepare questionnaires on areas where they want to know about, maybe for a new product they are going to introduce. Describing the product details and other things, they prepare a questionnaire and go to the market, ask customers to fill it. And then summarize data. And survey findings are there. Market research. Use surveys or interviews to get the opinions from customers in this regard. The market surveys to gather information from customers and their preferences. Elephant House, when they are planning for a new range of ice cream, new taste of ice cream, Orange, they conducted a series of market surveys to decide upon taste, Orange. Do you prefer the tastes of Orange? So they have decided the taste based on the customer preferences. A different range. In addition to their Elephant House ice cream. So like well, these two, the last two mentioned here are the most commonly used techniques in this regard. One is called sales force composite, very simple idea. And then of course, jury of executive opinion. The name is little different, but idea is very simple. What is this one, jury of executive opinion? That is where some executives or the managers of the organization, representing different departments, come together and share their experiences, viewpoints, put together and arrive at forecasts. Executive opinions. Pool opinions of high-level executives Sometimes with the support of statistical models or the sales figures, other data, they make better decisions. That is also very practical, highly useful technique forecasting purpose. Have you heard of something called in operations, probably not, but there are sometimes production planning teams. We call that team SNOP team, Sales and Operations Planning team, SNOP team. As an example for this kind of theory of executive opinion, sales and operations team involves in identifying the demand for different product categories for next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So it is a team that represents sales department in one side, and on this other side the marketing as well, sales and marketing together. They know the market demand, competition, changes in the market very well. In addition to that, they use a production team, the production manager, to know about the production capacity, what they can manufacture and all. And at the same time, they get the support of supply managers, procurement managers, who involved in purchasing materials and all. So these few departments with the support of finance or maybe accounting, and one representation from the top management, they together decide what are our future quantities for the next 6 months, 9 months, sales plans for the next year, at least 6 to 9 months. So it's a kind of theory of executive opinions that is more effective in deciding the forecasts. Clear? The last one mentioned here is the most practical one, commonly used in businesses. We call it sales force composite, especially when you don't have past data or when the past data is not so reliable. They go for this approach where they get the details from the people in the market, sales force, sales executives, area managers, and sales team or the demand forecasting team will ask them to give their future sales. We call it sales commitments. Right? For the next 3 months, 6 months, what are your sales commitments for each product category? Right? So by summarizing all these sales commitments coming from different sales executives, area managers, putting things together, we can summarize forecasts. Not based on past data, but based on experience or the opinions of people working in the field. That way, better forecasts can be calculated. So likewise, those are the different techniques we identified. How many we identified? There are 5 here. Is that clear? What are those? Those are qualitative forecasting techniques available for forecasting purposes. If we ask any questions, if any. You also can mark your attendance. Those who are connected online can also mark their attendance. And shall we take a small break, probably 10 to 15 minutes, and meet around 9:45. Some may have not taken their breakfast. We'll meet around 9:45. Have a paper quality. But let's move to the second part of it. Thank you for coming on time. I hope those who are connected online also are there. Right, within next 15 to 20 minutes, we will quickly understand some simple quantitative forecasting techniques. So there are many advanced techniques. We will initially identify the simple techniques here and then how they are useful in forecasting purposes. And after that, I will show you how practically in businesses they are used quickly. So coming to statistical forecasting or objective forecasting, as we already identified, in there they use historical data, past sales, and then different formula to forecast the future values. So accordingly, there are these simple time series methods. These are time series methods because as you see, there are time series techniques like moving averages, exponential smoothing, and various other time series models. And then of course regression models like simple regression, multiple regression. Even correlation can be used for forecasting purposes, as we have studied in some other subjects. Have you? I think yes. So we'll quickly identify some of these time series techniques because they are very simple and then practically used even in so there are many advanced techniques, even in large scale organizations, they still depend on some of these simple techniques. Right. Here we try to identify simple 5 techniques, 5 time series techniques for forecasting. You may not require to do calculations and all, but just have an idea, that's enough. Is it clear that in quantitative techniques we depend on past data, past sales data, and then some formula? The first technique here, they call it naive technique or naive forecasting. Have you heard of it? That's the most simplest form of it, where the actual value of the last period is considered as the forecast of the next period. That's simple. Actual figure of the last period is considered as the forecast of the next period. Very simple. One might question, is that enough? Is that okay? Yes. Some companies, they just follow the naive forecasting technique. That is to take the most immediate actual value as the forecast. Right. That technique is known as naive forecasting. Say for an example, if you are given, this is just for an study purpose, very simple figures are mentioned here. Assume that you are given these information for period 1 to 11, first 11 months of a year. These are the actual sales, orders. Right. So those are the actual figures. If you have to determine the forecast of the 11th month using the naive forecasting, what it would be then? What is the forecast of 11th period here? That is the actual of the most recent period. That is the period of 10, 80 is the forecast. 88 is the forecast there. It's very simple, but very practical. Small to medium scale firms especially, they don't have any other complicated way of calculating forecast and all. They just get the past figure as the next forecast. Like in accounting or budgeting, you also sometimes depend on the past figure and get just adjusted. So like this, naive forecasting. But as educated students, you can understand, just depend on the past figure may give you a wrong picture. That may not be accurate forecast for the next period because that value is just a value of the past period. At least it's good if you can look at the past numbers and identify whether there's a pattern and accordingly get the average of it at least. That approach is called simple average. Where simple average, you consider all the periods given and all the values together and divided by number of periods. So you get an average for the entire period, which seems to be more realistic because it gives you an average idea or average value. So that is considered as simple average. So if you have to calculate the forecast of 11th month, can you quickly add things together and divided by 10? That's a forecast. Simple average. That's forecast technique. Simple average. Add all the values together and divided by number of periods, in this case that is 10, you get the average of all periods as the forecast of 11th period. Simple meaning or simple mean or simple average as a technique. I'm not going to show the calculations in that you can simply understand it. Now, coming to the third one, we call it moving average. Have you studied it before? Yeah, probably yes. Moving average. Now, there what happens is, this is the formula for that, moving average. Now, when you take the average of entire period, right? What happens often is, all the past figures that are outdated sometimes, that are not relevant for the most recent periods, we'll have to consider. So that all the periods will get the same weight. That is not appropriate. So that is why there is this simple technique called moving average, where they decide how many periods to consider. Is that 3 periods or 5 periods? Not all the periods. Now, deciding that number, is one thing, and then let's say in this case you are asked to consider 3 period moving average. That means most immediate 3 periods only, and get the average of it, do the calculation, and get the forecast. If you have to use 5 period moving average, that means you get the most recent 5 periods average as a forecast. Let me help you with a simple calculation there. So if you have to use 3 period moving average and calculate 11 period forecast, what it would be? So you consider only these 3. add 3 together, divided by 3. You get the value here. So likewise, if you can continue from the top, say for example, you want to identify the forecast of period 4, right? Forecast. So in this case, you can start only from period 4, right? Because you need at least 3 periods actual values that we have here. So add 3 together, divided by 3, you get the forecast for period 4. Here. 122, 91, and 100. Come into 3, 1, 3 divided by 3. 104 point something. That's the forecast for period 4. And coming to period 5, right, that is these 3 years that we consider. Remove the oldest one, add the latest one, and give the average of it as the forecast for period 5. So likewise, you continue. You remove the oldest one and add the most recent one to get the average of it and continue. So likewise. Hope that is clear. Simple moving average. Because simple average may not be accurate, may not be appropriate for certain data sets. Then demand patterns. If you are to use 5 periods moving average, that means you are considering most immediate 5 periods. Let's say in that case, if we want to calculate the forecast for these periods, we may go to start only after 8th period. So you get the values up to this point, add things together divided by 5 to get the forecast for period
Online students,
5.
we can't see the whiteboard, sir.
I'm sorry. You can't see the whiteboard, is that?
Yeah, sir.
I'm sorry. How can I help you in that regard?
Sir, you write in the this board.
This board. Okay, we'll do so. Thank you for the suggestion. Now, I was just explaining moving average part of it. Moving average part of it. I'm sorry, I forgot it. Now, coming to 5 period moving average, we will be able to get the average of these past 5 periods, right? Add these 5 together and divided by 5. Divided by 5, right? Add these 5 together, divided by 5, you get the forecast for period 6. If you to calculate period 7 value, you consider up to 6, up to 6. Now, how to go back? This be done. All right, okay, it's working. So only up to 6. And get the total divided by 5, you get the average for period 7. So likewise. So that is moving average part of it. If you give a data set like this and ask to calculate the forecast for each period, that is what you should do. Uh, However, these moving averages, whether that is 3 periods, 5 periods, or 7 periods, whatever it is, in that decision makers cannot control the importance of each period. That means all the historical values will be given the same weight. But for some data sets, some managers would prefer to give more weights for some periods, less weights for some other periods. To incorporate such requirements, there is this technique called weighted moving average. No? What is the technique? Weighted moving average. In which not only number of periods they have to decide the weights for each period as well. Say for an example, in the next slide, you are given an example like 3 period weighted moving average. Thinking or assuming these weights, 0.5 for the most recent period, 0.3 for the period prior to that, and 0.2 for the prior period. So likewise, 3 periods, 3 weights, and using that, forecast the value. So likewise. So for an example, for the data that is given here, if we are to calculate the forecast for 11 period, if I straight away go there, right? You have to consider the most recent 3 time periods, that is period 10, 9, and 8, and weights like this 0.5, 0.3, and 0.2. 0.2. So multiply the actual value by the weight, right? Likewise, 3 of them, and add 3 together, you will get an answer. Say for an example, 8. Can I write the also? Can I? No, here only, right? $88 into 5 plus 111 into 0.3 plus 128 into 0.2. Add 3 together, you get the forecast for period 11. In that case, should we divide it by 3 again? No, we don't have to, because weight is given in a way that 3 weights equal to 1. 0.5 plus 0.3 plus 0.3 2 equals 1. So that we don't have to divide it by any now. So that is how you use weighted moving average. Those who are connected online, I'm not sure whether you can see it. Can you?
Yes, sir, we can see.
So those are the simple techniques. Each technique may be different little bit, but depending on the manager's requirement, they can use it. We identify just simple techniques here. Simple moving, naive technique. Yeah, you consider the actual value of the most recent period as a forecast. Simple average, the average of entire period as a forecast. Moving average, you decide number of periods to consider and get the average of that only. And finally, we discuss about weighted moving average. You decide the number of periods to consider and the weights assigned to each period as well, and accordingly get a forecast depending on the data set. In addition to that, there is this technique also, exponential smoothing, which the equation is given. Okay, let me show it quickly to you. That exponential smoothing is a kind of weighted average technique, weighted technique where you will consider entire time period and a particular weight value. The equation given here shows you what to use in exponential smoothing here. As you see it here, right? Forecast value for the next period, forecast t plus 1, that is the next period, equals alpha into actual of the last period, or actual of the most recent period, AT. Right? Within brackets, 1 minus alpha into forecast of the most recent period, forecast of t, where alpha is a value, alpha is a weight. Alpha is a weight decided by the management. It should be a value between 0 to 1. It could be 0.2, it could be 0.5, 0.8, or any value in between 0 to 1. Right? So that is the weight decided based on the data set. So alpha is a weight decided by the management. Clear? A value between 0 to 1. 0.25 as well. It will be any value. Right? Now in this case, you are given one example. Considering alpha equals 0.2, if we are to use exponential smoothing technique and forecast the demand, how to apply the equation and then forecast the value. Let me show you with 1 or 2 steps, and you can complete at home and understand how to do that. Right? Exponential smoothing. This is the equation. Forecast for the next period, if T1 equals alpha actual T into 1 minus alpha into forecast value. Now, as you see here, just having the actual value is not enough. We need to have one forecast figure also for that. So, if you are given such a question, you will be given a forecast as well. At least you will be asked to assume forecast of a particular period is this. Say for an example. To make our calculations easier, to make our calculations easier, I will assume a forecasted value Otherwise, we have to start from the beginning. I will consider period 6 forecasted value as, let's say, I will consider it as, based on the calculations, right? I will consider this as 115. Right? And I'm going to start our calculations from there. Assuming alpha equals 0.2 and forecasted value for period 6 as 150. I'm going to calculate the forecast for period 11 using this equation, the one that I showed you earlier, this one. So we have to start from period 7. We can't straight away go to period 11 if you have to use exponential smoothing. So for period 7, right? For period 7, forecast seven equals, have a look on the equation there, alpha into actual of the last period, right? So I'm thinking of 7. So alpha, that is 0.2. Alpha value. When we assume 0.2 as the weight, 0.2 as the alpha, right, for the first calculation. Alpha into actual of the last period, that is 58. Isn't so? Right. I'm thinking of forecast of the 7th period based on the actual value of the 6th period and its forecast. So actual value is 58. Alpha into actual value of most recent period, that is period 6 plus 1 minus alpha. 1 minus alpha. What does that mean? Alpha equals 0.2. 1 minus alpha means 1 minus 0.2. So that is 0.8. Into FT, that means the most recent period's forecast. That I assumed as 150. So that is the equation. So I have substituted the values here for the period 7. This is how we are going to calculate the forecast using exponential smoothing technique, and alpha equals 0.2. So we get an answer, just write it down here as the forecast for period 7 that we calculate. We need that forecast and the actual for 7th period to calculate the period 8 forecast. So likewise, you have to continue until 10th period so that we have an actual value for 10th period and a forecast for 10th period based on which we can go for 11th period. Can you do it 1 or 2 more steps and check whether you get an answer? I just did it for 7th period. If someone wonder from where I got this, value as 115 for 6 period, I just assume it. So in your calculations also, you will have to assume, otherwise you will be given an information. So based on those, you have to calculate further. I have to learn how to use this name. I'm not so good at it. Using Excel, we can easily apply all these formula and then just a matter of taking it down. No need to worry about those calculations. What you should know is the differences between these techniques. Excel, when you set the equation and drag it, you will automatically calculate all these values. For one or two figures would be enough. Oh, tell me, what is the forecasted value for ninth period you get? Ninth period. Repeat it, please. 72. Okay. Is that correct? For the ninth period, forecasted value for the exponential the smoothing period, 72. Could be true. Right, that's enough. Right. What we identified here, some simple time series models. For quantitative forecasting, you must have an idea. Now, I'm moving back to slide number 9. I'm moving back to slide number 9. So, in our discussion today, we identified that there are different forecasting models, forecasting techniques. Qualitative, there are different techniques. Quantitative, different models. Now, one might think how to select the best one, considering what factors the management should decide which forecasting model would be more useful, more appropriate. So slide number 9 gives you a few criteria to decide upon the forecasting models. So in other words, these are different factors to consider by the management, different factors to consider when deciding which forecasting model, which forecasting technique would be appropriate for our operations forecasting purpose or demand forecasting purpose. So there are certain criteria like these. What is the first one? The purpose of the forecast. For what purpose we forecast this value? Is it for a long-term purpose? More than 1 year or 2 years time that we are going to consider it? Or intermediate or short run? Well, that is the time horizon of the purpose in the sense specifically this demand forecast. Is that for planning the production? Is that for expanding our capacity? Putting up new technology or new factories? So what purpose we are going to use? And then of course the second one I mistaken mention it. So time horizon, that means whether that is for long-term purpose, intermediate term or short-term. Depending on the time period, they can decide which forecasting model to use. Likewise, there are other criteria also, like the third one, data availability. What it could be? Data availability. whether the required quantitative data is available or qualitative data is available, and depending on that, we have to decide whether we should use it or not. Accuracy required. This is an important thing. Forecasts are forecasts. They are not accurate at all, right? Sometimes we don't know what will happen in the future. But we need some forecasts to make decisions. We can come to know the actuals only at the end of the period. So we have to understand forecasts may go wrong. Forecasts can be inaccurate. So when we make decisions, when we select different forecasting techniques, we have to identify what is the precision level, accuracy level we need. Are we looking at a very high accuracy or accurate levels, or moderate could be accepted? Likewise, if you go for high precision levels, most accurate, most reliable forecasting technique should be selected. To decide that, there are different techniques. I will just discuss one or two with you and show you the importance of that. In addition to that, there are other techniques also. So that is called accuracy required. How accurate, how the level of accuracy we need. Depending on that, we will select the forecasting model. In addition to that, there are other factors also, like forecasting budget available, right? Depending on the resource. Management wants to conduct a market survey, and for that you have to spend 2-3 millions, right? But only you have is few lakhs. If you don't have adequate budget, certain forecasting models are not possible. Forecasting techniques are not possible. Then also another factor is availability of qualified people, qualified staff, qualified personnel to conduct these forecasting, especially qualitative forecasting techniques. Right, you will have to recruit a person who can coordinate this thing. In case of market survey, you need to have a marketing researcher or qualified person to design and conduct a market survey and give you the forecast. So, availability of qualified people. Coming to quantitative data also same. You need some people, experts who can analyze data using these formula with the support of other advanced techniques and give you the accurate figures. In addition to that, another criteria, that is consequences of a bad forecast. What will happen if your forecast go wrong? What is the impact it will create? Long term, big impact, or short term, minor impact? Or in between? Depending on that, the forecasting techniques should be selected, they say, right? So that's simple idea, I guess. You can understand it. However, since there are different forecasting models, techniques, management should have an idea for what purpose, what forecasting technique would be practically useful. As you, there are many issues with the existing factory. Factory is not enough. Machinery is not enough. So there are complaints from the factory managers to establish a new factory. Make accurate decision there. You need some evidences. You need some facts. For that, you need some forecasts. Whether putting up a new factory would be appropriate, would be effective for the business. For that, you need forecasts. And then based on that, you have to calculate back. Like what you do in management accounting, right? Based on forecast, you calculate. Right? So those are operations management planning that you do in cost accounting or management, basically management accounting subject. So for that you need accurate data. Otherwise, you may forecast the data. Forecast says there's a growing demand. for 2026, 7, 8, 30, 35. Right? You decide to invest huge amount of money. You put up a new factory to see in 2028, technology is completely changed to a new one. Customers prefer the latest products, not the products coming from the oldest technology. So that entire investment will be wasted. That is not profitable because you have made a wrong decision based on wrong forecasts. So consequences of a bad forecast should be considered when selecting a forecast report. Is that clear? That's all we have to discuss today on this topic. So, but there will be another part that is forecast accuracy part that I will take by 10 to 15 minutes maximum. Right, is that clear? Now, coming to this idea that is forecast accuracy, it's good to know how to decide which forecasting technique is more accurate than the others. Right. And to understand that, there are a few techniques that I have described here in slide number 13. To measure the forecast accuracy, there are some measurements. We call them forecast accuracy measures. In slide number 13, I have just introduced to you what are the simple forecast accuracy measures used. We are not going to discuss everything, but only one or two, probably one technique. Other two you can understand. Right. Shall we move to that content? Forecast accuracy. As you already identified, forecasts are forecasts. They are not perfect. Only at the end of the period we come to know the actuals. We can compare the actuals with forecast and realize, okay, we made the decisions based on these forecasts, but the actuals are different. Now, time to time, when managers realize there are different forecasting techniques that gives us different forecasts, how to decide which forecasting technique is more accurate for decision making than others? How to decide that? Deciding that is important, and for that there are these different techniques they use. We call them forecast accuracy measures. Forecast accuracy measures, in which we measure something called forecast error, right? And accordingly make a decision of the forecasting technique. So it is important to know how much we should rely on the forecasting method, and for that we can use these forecast accuracy measures. So what is meant by forecast error? What is meant by forecast error? As you see it here, forecast error is the difference between the actual value, right, reported at the end of the period and the forecasted value. So simply it is AP minus MT. Actual for the same period minus forecast value for the same period. The difference between these two values is what we call the forecast error. That is the concept we use, but there are different measures used for forecasting errors, forecast accuracy measures. MSE is one, MAD is another one, tracking signal is another one. MSE stands for mean square error. MAD stands for mean absolute deviations. And tracking signal is combination of kind of little advanced technique, but more accurate in predicting the forecasting accuracy. So let me show you one example only. Probably that will I will consider MAD technique and show you how to calculate them. By the way, all equations are given here, but I will consider only the first one here. MAD, mean absolute deviation. How to calculate forecast error using that technique. And then of course, the equation for MSC is also given, packet signal is also given, but I will just show you the MAD one. To get an idea, let's quickly use this example. It says here determine the MAD value for the above data set. I'm not going to use it for MSC. You can also apply the equation here and understand, but I will just show you the MAD one. Right. There are 5 periods and the actuals and the forecasts, based on which we are going to calculate MAD over this data set and make a decision. In fact, just calculating one MAD is not enough to make a decision. We need to compare to make a decision. I will show you. But to know how to calculate MAD, let's use this example. Right. To know how to calculate MAD, mean absolute deviation. Now, we have to first calculate forecast error. We have to first calculate the forecast error in order to calculate MAD, right? Actual minus forecast. So I will just use this column for that. The difference between actual and the forecast. A minus A. Clear? You can write it down. Calculate MAD. We need the difference between actual and forecast. We call it forecast error. That is A minus F. A minus F for each time period. A actual, F forecast for the same period. That's the difference. Now for the first period here, first month, actual is 220, forecast is not given. So we are unable to calculate a forecast error there. Coming to the second period, actual is 250. This is a simple example, just to get the concept right. So actual is 250, forecast is 255. 250 minus 255, answer is minus 5. So minus 5. Just to get the idea, we have this simple example. Moving to period number 3, where the actual value is 210 at the end of the period. Initially, they have forecasted at 205. So the difference, forecast error is 210 minus 205 plus 5. Plus 5. Moving to period number 4, actual is 300, whereas forecasted value was 220. So the difference, forecast error is 300 minus 320 minus 20. Minus 20. Coming to period number 5, actual 325 minus 350, that is plus 10. Right. Plus 10. So what we have calculated here, forecast error. In MAD calculation, what we need is not just the forecast error, but something called absolute error. Absolute deviation. That is what they mean by this side. Right? So we need not the difference, but absolute difference. Absolute difference. Absolute in the sense. Now, we consider just the difference, irrespective of the sign of it. Ignore the sign. Ignore the plus or the positive or negative value. We get the difference of. Yes, we will get it there. Right? I will show it because we need to get the absolute difference and the total of it, not the difference here. Right? So to get the MAD, we have to get the absolute difference. I'm just showing you how to get the absolute difference here. Right? So for the first period, we don't have a difference. Right? Coming to the second period, difference comes as -5, but we should consider it as just 5. Absolute difference. Coming to the third period, that is plus 5. So that means 5. Right? That means you consider all the values as plus values. Coming to fourth period, that is 20. Coming to fifth period, that is 10. Take the equation there, we have to get the actual difference. Sorry, absolute difference. Right? And the total of that. Total of that, you add things together. 30, 40. Right? So that is the total of absolute difference divided by n. Divided by n. Now in this case, we have values for four periods. So that we get an answer like 10. For this data set, MAD value is 10.
Sir, once more explain, sir, why are you dividing the 4, sir?
We are divided by 4 because we don't have a value for first period. So we just ignore that in our calculation. We consider only 4 periods. That is why we divided it by 4.
Yeah, okay, sir.
So we have received an answer for MAD that is 10. But as I told you earlier, just having one MAD value doesn't will not support us in selecting a method. For that, we need to have MAD values for different forecasting techniques. And then we can compare MAD values and decide which one is accurate, more accurate than the others. We have just identified how to calculate the MAD. Say for an example, there was another technique. Based on that, you have a data set. You calculate MAD. For that, you got 20 as MAD. For that data set, for that equation, MAD value is 20. But in this case, this is 10. Right? So when we compare both, which one would be more reliable than the other? Of course, the one that has a lower MAD value is more reliable than the other. That is how we compare it. Right? Lower the better. Lower the difference, higher the reliability. So that is what this is. Only through comparison we can identify which technique is more reliable over the other. One might ask, why absolute difference here? Why can't we just get the actual difference? The forecast error only. Hope you can understand why it is not appropriate. Why? If we just get the forecast error only, what can happen? Would that tell us the accurate picture there? As you can see, no, it won't be. Because when we add the totals together, when we add the forecast errors together with their actual differences, like there are plus values, there are negative values. So things get set off internally. So the actual differences might not be reflected in the total value. So for example, if you get the forecast errors together, -5 plus 5 set offs together, and here also -20 plus 10. So as a total, what we get is plus 10. When we divide it by 4 also, we get a very low value. But is that the real picture? No. There are more differences, but internal sets off. So that is why this equation, MAD calculation, they go into absolute deviations and get the average of it, mean absolute deviation, and we use it for comparison. I hope that is clear. So this has a measure for forecast error. Very useful. In MSc, you may see, to avoid that mistake, right, instead of absolute deviation, they get the square of it. See, MSc, they get the square of the difference. So that again, it reduce, that can be used to reduce that internal set-offs. Whereas tracking signal is a technique used by, forecast errors divided by MAD. It's a kind of ongoing technique, right? For each situation, each forecast, you can calculate where the forecasting is moving, right? And the tracking signal, they call it, right? And accurate, it's a kind of ongoing technique to assess whether the forecasting technique is giving you reliable forecasts. Don't worry much about it. Just be familiar with the idea we are explaining here. That is mean absolute deviation. You can, let's say for an example, at home. At home, if you can compare 3 months or 3 period moving average and 5 period moving average for this data set and give a comment, which forecasting method is more accurate over the other? Write it down there. So use, it may be measure, use MAD measure to identify whether to use 3 period moving average or 5 period moving average. Three period moving average or 5 period moving average to arrive at more reliable or more accurate, more reliable or more accurate forecasts for this data set. Something like that. When you calculate 3-period moving average, you may have to start from period 4 only. From period 4 onwards, you will be able to calculate a forecast value for 3-period moving average. But for 5-period moving average, you will be able to start only after 6th period. So, right? Only after 6th period. So, based on those two data sets, actuals versus forecast. Actuals versus forecast. Get the forecast error, then calculate the absolute difference and calculate MAD for two data sets. How to make the decision then? Hello, how to compare the MAD value? MAD values, once calculated, the lower the MAD, higher the forecast accuracy. Lower the MAD, higher the forecast accuracy. This is just to get a simple idea. I will only use 2-3 minutes. But practically, with the support of forecasting software solutions available, all these forecasting requirements are now can be fulfilled within few seconds time. So there are various different forecasting software solutions available for analyzing whatever the data set they have, especially quantitative data. Simple Excel, Microsoft Excel spreadsheets to various other statistical packages. And then of course the specialty forecasting packages, right? So as accountants, as general auditors, in future you will be studying more of them, practically use them in your activities in your profession. So in the same manner for operations decision making also, especially for demand forecasting, many such advanced forecasting techniques are used. In addition to that, what is the latest development? In addition to these specialized forecasting software packages, what is often used in decision making now? Yeah. Artificial intelligence, yes, can be used often, but to analyze the data, where the data is available now in most of the cases, most of the industries, yeah, databases, systems, right? So that maybe stored in physical databases or clouds, but wherever, right? So those are system-based data, right? So it could be sales figures, it could be production figures, it could be purchasing figures, whatever. They are readily available in what? Now we call them ERP solutions. ERP solutions. So that it's a matter of few clicks. You can decide what reports you need, what analysis you want to do, right? Everything will be organized as per your request within few seconds time. And to support that, there are various different data analytics solutions available, data visualization, data analytics techniques available for us to forecast data and visualize them in a more more appropriate manner to support the decision making. Hope that is clear. So that part of it is called, in case of supply and operations, we call it, it could be sales analytics or sales and marketing analytics or supply chain analytics. Right. So that is where most of the leading firms that have already invested for ERP, they operate, they make decisions. But for other organizations, medium scale, family businesses that you will visit and observe, they are still using some of these basic techniques to forecast. What did we discuss today? Demand forecasting, the use of demand forecasting for operations management decision making, and the main part of it, what we identified was different forecasting models, techniques. We divided the forecasting approaches into two main categories. One is qualitative approach, in which we use the judgments, opinions, intuition of experts to decide the forecasts. And the most common traditional approach is quantitative approach, in which we use statistical methods using past data and formula, calculating the forecast. At the end, we identified, since there are different methods, their forecasts may be different. So we need to have an idea about the accuracy of the forecast. And for that, there are different forecast accuracy measures. We identified only one that was named as mean absolute deviation. So that we can calculate, mean MAD value that we can calculate for each forecasting technique and compare the techniques to identify the most reliable ones. Lower the MAD value, higher the reliability accuracy. We have 10 more minutes, but let's stop it here rather than starting a new topic. Right? You can have a 1 hour break before starting the next lecture. Right? Thank you very much. Take good care of yourself. See you later.